Okay, so today we're going to be going over basic improvisation techniques. So these are totally beginner, like you've never improvised ever before. But you're in a context, you're in a setting where you're like looking at chords and you're in, let's say, seventh chords, and you're kind of like, I don't know what to play over this. Well, there's so many techniques out there. There's modes, bebop ways, bebop scales. Like there's so many ways to approach that. But let's just say you need to get like your bearings. Like you just don't have a concept of what to play. So if you're someone who's past that point, then I would say this video is not for you. But for those who are first starting out, it's really intimidating to start improvising, especially in front of people. You're like, what do I do? And you kind of have to let the guard down and shake it out and kind of be like, I'm just going to go for it, you know? But within that, right, we can't just play whatever we want. Or, you know, you could, right? Nothing's holding you back. But we have to create limitations first in order to build on each step. Okay, so for today, the concept is going to be, how can you improvise over a chord just using the chord tones? So I'm just going to take F7, okay? So for F7, my chord tones are F, A, C, E flat. So that's root, third, fifth, flat 7. Now I want to basically create a parameter for myself. So let's say that F7 in the song play is written on the chart for like 2 measures. Okay, well, I'm going to focus on a chord tone that I'm going to hit on that chord. I'm going to hit the third. And the reason I chose the third to start with is because the third is one of our guide tones. The third and the seventh are guide tones. The reason they're guide tones is because they're the most important chord tones in the chord because they distinguish the quality of the chord. Quality of the chord meaning between minor, major, diminished, you know, all that stuff. So let's say I set up a tempo here, 1, 2, and I have F7 for, let's say, 4 bars. And I'm just going to pick a rhythm. I'm going to pick a rhythm, da, da. And I'm only going to play the third of the chord. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Seems really boring, right? But now let's involve a different chord tone. So, right, we're expanding the parameter. We're expanding the limitation. For the first bar, I'm going to play the third. For the second bar, I'm going to play the fifth. For the third bar, I'm going to go back to the third. And for the fourth bar, I'm going to go back to the fifth. So I'm just alternating, right? Every other bar between the third and the fifth. Those 2 chord tones. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, really simple, right? But now I wanna do something more, right? So let's talk about approach techniques. That sounds kind of intimidating at first, but an approach technique is just how do you approach a chord tone, you know, without, you can use a scale to approach a chord tone. You could use an approach technique, which is what we're gonna go over, right? So an approach technique is kind of like using the nearby notes of the target note. So let's say the target note is the third, so that's A on F7. And I want to approach it from a half step, right? So this is kind of rooted in traditional jazz, like, you know, bebop kind of playing, but it's a good way to start out. So I'm going to use this approach technique. You could kind of learn it by ear, or we can also talk about like what exactly it is, which we will. So I'm gonna go. So, all right, so I landed on that third. Now notice I started the phrase on the upbeat because I wanted the A, the third, to land, the chord tone to land on the downbeat. So as a beginner improviser, that's going to be your goal, having your chord tones land on the downbeat. I don't care how you approach or how you get to the chord tone, but that's the goal for now. So what did I just play? Well, you could memorize it by ear, de do do do. But basically, I just approached it from a half step above it, and I kind of circled around the note. So I went half step above A, B flat, and then I went a whole step below it, and then half step below it, and I landed. Right? So it kind of circled. It went dee do do do. It literally circled the note. You don't have to even do it that many notes. You could approach it from just a half step up, right? So it could be, or it could be, right? It's a bunch of different ways, but we're keeping it close to the note right now because that chromaticism creates tension and creates like a better resolve once you actually hit the target note. So I'm going to do this for now. And for 2 bars, I'm going to do that. And then for the second 2 bars of F7, I'm going to do that approaching the flat 7. So E flat. Okay? So that'll be. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So these are things that can lead you into phrases like what I just finished it off with, okay? But basically, I would say if you're a super beginner to improvisation, just start with knowing your chord tones. I would say the next 2 steps are learning the blues scale, and learning your pentatonic scale. More advanced stuff is like learning the modes and the bebop scale and the altered dominant scale and all of those things. But honestly, what's going to be the biggest help to you is using your ear. And when you're improvising, really let your ear lead you to what you want to play. And then also transcribe as much music as you can and transcribe solos. And you don't have to transcribe a whole solo. Just transcribe a phrase. Right? Like this is a phrase I learned a long time ago. And then I just kind of analyzed it and I was like, oh. And then later on in life I learned, oh, that's an approach technique. So this is all stuff that you can easily do. Set up a metronome for yourself, right? So you don't have to keep time like I'm doing, right? But you can have a metronome keep time for you. And just right now, just focus on your chord tones and hitting those on the downbeat. Okay, I hope that helped for some beginner improvisation techniques.